can't move. It's just spread out all over the place. Alrighty? Okay, just get started. This is Jim Peterson's outdoor winter hardy yard. This started all about 1985. Jim was one of the original members of our group. And I had, like I think a lot of people had a little collection. You know, I had the 2-inch pots on the windowsill. So I was talking to Jim one day and he said, why don't you come over to my house and see my collection? And he lived on Collingswood Avenue here, now since passed, unfortunately. He says, okay, he says, you can see my outdoor yard with winter hardy cacti. I said, Jim, what the hell are you talking about? You know, cacti growing in the cold? Well, I went over here. This is his yard probably about 35 years ago. He gave me about 14 cuttings. And I took them home and planted them. Most of them are probably gone by now. So this is how I got started. I didn't have the vaguest knowledge. I don't think that cacti would survive in the really cold weather. Okay, you know, I can let you guys, forgive me for putting a lot of this on the screen, but if I don't, I'll forget it. You know, you can read this if you want. And, you know, they're all over the place, you know, growing in hot areas. We always see these photographs of, you know, Arizona, these monstrous plants and that. And they go into Washington State, like say, the bottom part there says desert plants with a little help can be grown. They're not endemic. Well, there's one or two, which is Humifosum. I think that's about it, isn't it, Bruce? I think maybe there's one other, I don't know. But yeah, you don't see very. Yeah, well, Ohio is not a cacti state. So, yeah, right. So why do you want to grow these bad boys? Well, they flower relatively easy. They're disease and pest. I can let you read. They're readily available. You can find these things online if you really want to. Relatively cheap, unlike you get a bonsai plant for $100 and it dies a couple of weeks later and you're on $100. I'm sorry, Mouse. They're very tolerant of neglect. I mean, I can go on, you can go, even as indoor plants, you can go on vacation for 2 weeks, come back and nothing's happened. Give them a go, watering before you go. They're very easy to propagate, believe it or not. They're, unlike some plants which are very hard. Can make dramatic landscape plants. And they're a great entry into the world of succulents because they're very easy to grow, really. They have a relatively long lifespan. In fact, I've got one growing in my yard right now, which is probably approaching 45 years old. And I have one growing in my living room, a euphorbia, which is now approaching probably 90 years old. And they're extremely resilient. I don't think I can spell resilient there. That is, they will take a lot of abuse. They're relocatable, and that means you can, if you've got one in your yard, you can dig it up and take it someplace else. And they travel well. By that I mean if you order something from a nursery out west, it will make it here in good shape. A lot of plants will not do that. So, pardon? Yeah, even rooted cuttings will. Yeah, they're very easy to root, and staying in a box for 10 days doesn't seem to bother them at all. Now, reasons not to grow winter hardy cacti. On the left there is, that is Opuntia divicii, which, look at the spines on that bad boy. That is really ugly. Then the one on the right is Opuntia imbricata. All I'm trying to say is if you've got any grandkids or that, or dogs running around, you really don't want these two. But this one here, that's the 45-year-old plant. I don't know when that photograph was taken. Probably quite a while ago, because it's about this high now. So, okay, God, that's horrible. But all right. They just, I'll read this. What they really need is lots of sunlight and lots of drainage. So do not plant them in compacted soil or, you know, just whatever you would try to, any soil mix that is well drained. And that is porous so the plant, because cacti do not like wet feet. That goes for outdoor cacti too. You know, you do not see them growing in swamp areas and that. So, okay, there's three major categories of them actually, and there are about 100 species. There's probably more now as they begin to hybridize. First type are the pad type. These are the ones you're sprawling. You've probably seen them. They grow. I've got some pictures of it a little later. All over the ground, and they never get more than a foot high. They're just real small. Then there's a bush erupt. A puncher compressor is the best example. It just stays very low, but it will grow all over the place. Then the bush upright. You've all seen these where the bush is about this high. You've probably seen them growing in Arizona. They get this high. They're not going to get this high in Ohio. We just don't have the growing season. They will grow, but they won't get monstrous. Oh, another one. God, these didn't look bad. I can't even read that. I'm sorry, folks.
Okay, great. Well,
yeah.
When you get done, you can email us the club.
Yeah.
I'll pick it up and email it out.
Here's just a photograph of this. Is probably the pad type, which is more forming, a low growth. As you can see, it's about a foot high. Here's imbricata in flower. This is the one that's 45 years old. This is the cholla type. Beautiful flowers, by the way. That's I don't know what you call that color, but there is a plant which, long story, I lost. That is Opuntia strigil. Here's an example of a pads that will grow into a big clump if you allow it. This thing got even higher than that. And you can see the imbricata in the background. Pardon? Yeah, it's about this. It's collapsed a couple of times. There are two other types of cacti which are supposedly winter hardy. I can't even pronounce this. Pronounce this for me, Bruce. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I missed it. I screwed up. I'm sorry. I left out the try. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Anyway, these are supposed to be winter hardy. And there's some other plants and very similar to them. I tried this once and it turned to mush over the winter. But that doesn't mean you can't try it. You see photographs of these guys in the mountains of like Utah and okay. Yeah, probably, yeah. Anyway, this is an internet photo because I never grew it, so I don't have a photograph of it. Here's the other one, Cactus missouriensis. As its name implies, it comes from Missouri. You wouldn't think of cacti being in Missouri. Bruce says he has a whole bunch of these.
I got seedlings. I grow them and they're definitely hardy.
Yeah.
Got to the point where, they flower and send seeds.
Yeah, you can see that, yeah.
Fruits. And if I didn't gather them up, the ants would scatter the seeds, and I actually found some seedlings in the garden.
So, but I tried this once, I think, and it, again, was a disaster, but that doesn't mean that other people can't do it. And here I talked about one of the bad boys, which, unless you're really interested in, look at the spines on that guy. Just stay away from this unless you've got unless you've got a place you can plant this that, like is remote.
Located where the setting sun reflects off
Yeah.
the spines.
Right.
You get that really wonderful.
Oh, it's a gorgeous plant. Unfortunately,
Very, very plant, but those stones hurt going in and hurt coming.
yeah, they have little hooks on the end, which, oh boy, geez, these things look so good on my. Well, anyway, I'll just go over this. Sorry you can't read this. How do they survive the winter? Well, they kind of have a cellular antifreeze. Basically, they get rid of all the water in their pads. And they basically dehydrate themselves, a process called desiccation. And with less water in their pads, that means they have less material to freeze. And if you've ever seen it in the springtime, you'll see a lot of cacti that are just totally shriveled up. You think, oh my God, they've died. No, they just shriveled up. They will come back as soon as the water gets there. Those that,
They turn black.
well, we'll get to that. Yeah,
Disgusting when they're dead.
we'll get to that here in a minute.
But they literally look like a cactus raisin.
Yeah, really. Some of them have insulating spines or wool, which reduces the heat loss. It's like a natural coat for them. Some of them have dark pigmentation. You've probably seen the ones. What's the one that's real purple? God, mine's going. Yeah, it's almost purple. No, it's purple. Santa Rita. It's almost, and it, that these, yeah, well, because,
Dark
right.
night is supposed to be winter hardy here. I'm trying it. I have multiple pads on. I am going to be blessing whatever deity that caused it to have multiple pads. You may or may not get it.
No, I'm not asking, I'm just saying, as an insurance.
Oh, yeah.
well, they basically go into, the dark pigmentation absorbs more sunlight, which keeps them a little more warmer. I don't think it's a great thing, but they also enter a low metabolism state, which means that there's less water. They're more tolerant of the cold. So that's how they can do it. Basically, if they cannot get rid of that moisture in the fall, you've got problems. Okay, so all right, I started it out. Okay, this is the beginning of the collection. Start out in pots, little trays. I don't remember what half of those are, to tell you the honest God. This has got to be 30 years ago. So the next thing we moved up to is a barrel. You can see that flowered, and I don't remember what that is now, but and show you a plant with a label that's good. So I said, well, I'm running out of options here. They're getting too big for pots. They're getting too big for whiskey barrels. So I decided to go all out and build a winter hardy garden. I dedicate my side yard and strip along the side of my house for winter hardy plants. Okay, here's what I used. By the way, that was 54 wheelbarrows of carrying it from my driveway around to my backyard. And I thought I was doing real good, and basically what I did after about 15 years, I basically turned that into cement. Yeah. And I was still inexperienced at that time somewhat. I thought it'd be great, so I decided to go all out, placed an order with Intermountain Cacti. They had pardon? Yeah, really. I just got their catalog, which at that time was a printed catalog. You had to print it. There was no clicking, add the basket, that kind of thing. You filled it out, you sent it in with a check, and you got your plants. So I just said, well, I don't hardly know anything about these guys. And there was hardly any descriptions. It would say like, Opuntia egomenii, big pad. That was about the whole description. Nothing about, oh, it's winter hardy, does this. Intermountain Cacti pretty much specialized in winter hardy stuff. So I just went all out. And where else can you get these guys? Well, get them from local club members, which here, like most of it, like we've got a bunch of plants here, they're not cacti, but you can go to local box stores. They usually don't have a real selection of winter hardy stuff. You can go to your local garden stores. They usually have a better collection. They're usually real expensive. I do not know why. And you go to out of area stores and conservatories. By the way, if you ever go to another city and they have a conservatory, they have an outdoor garden, visit it if you can. What I got to tell you though is you go there and you see these beautiful plants, growing in a gravel bed. What you don't see is a whole gaggle of workers with tons of fertilizer and insecticide working behind the scenes, pulling out every little weed. So you don't see that. But a mail order is probably the easiest way, because if you go out right now, there's a bunch of websites which they will tell you all about the plant, what it needs, direct sunlight, what zone it's going to grow in, recommendations. Like Etsy has a great thing. Plant Lust has a wonderful selection. And so, you know, they're very easy to find, to tell you the truth. Here's my Intermountain. They came in a big box one day. And
You telling me 78 pads were in that box?
yes, there they are, most of them. All the little labels, which I managed to lose probably half of them. That's another whole story. You count them, there's probably close to, there's a whole bunch of little ones in there. By the time you count, there's probably pretty close to 78 in there. They won't let you count. But anyway, those were all in that box. So yeah, all wrapped in newspaper with little notes on them, says, be careful when you open this. And they were, they were right, believe me. Okay, first plantings alongside of my house. You notice how neat and orderly those are? I have absolutely no reason why. Cacti don't grow like that. I mean, now that I look back on it, I said, it looked good at the time. You notice all of them were staked up and all getting ready to grow. And this is probably 30 years ago. There's my little collection in the window there. Ones that started it all. Here's my original outdoor planting. I apologize for the slide, but you can see the same thing with, you know, where they're in the lower left-hand corner there, you can see where I planted things. Anyway, each bed was done with that. There are 4 beds, so. And about 10 years later, here's what you get. And there are 4 of these beds like this. By the way, this was taken off my roof. You can see the roof here. This was done, would have been 1995, I think.
So were you still in the car?
Yes. No, I was standing on my roof. The reason is I got a new roof. The gentleman says, come on up here and look at the roof. I'm just absolutely terrified of heights. But I went up there anyway, and I said, well, as long as I'm up here, why don't I take a photo? There are probably others, but I just can't locate them right now. Anyway, that's what you get. All those little one staked up pads turned into a, there's like a,
Those are 4x4.
yeah, there's 4 of them. There's 4 of these, and there's a smaller one in the center.
The size, 4x4.
No, they're 6x6. Yeah.
We're the one. You'll never be able to leave the bed.
Well, we're getting to that. So, well, we're getting to that. So here, boy, I apologize for you. This green looked real good when I showed it on my computer. I mean, on my thing, but it looks. Anyway, what happened is, one fall we had I think we had an Indian summer followed by heavy rains, and the plants just could not desiccate. They just could not get rid of the moisture, and the rot sets in. And there you go. That's what it looks like after it starts getting. You can see in right-hand corner there, up the other ones, and everything was lost. To tell you the truth, you tried to cut off the pads. The pads on, you know, the furthest most away, they would start rotting. So you cut them off, hoping. Then you look down, and you realize that the rot was systemic. It was just going right in there. So basically, Bruce lost all of his plants. I think everybody in Central Ohio. Everybody. It was just one of those. Yeah, really, yeah.
They had gone through, in various reasons, 2 winters, but technically spelled it these words here. And we thought it was like Ironside. We didn't think they would have that. And we lost, each of us lost every one of them.
Yeah. We lost everything. I mean, you can see what the damage was. The rot just set in and just destroyed all 4 beds.
Something like that happens in ice storm. Something like They
Yeah,
already lost all their hens and chicks
could be, yeah.
because it was too wet.
So, the hens and chicks, I know so much, are really furry ones, so,
Yeah.
you know, the activity doesn't even have to be very curated.
Yeah, I think what really happened is we had this very rainy season, then we had an Indian summer, so the plants decided to grow again, meaning they couldn't get rid of the water in there. And then when we had a sun and cold snap, they just basically, you can imagine,
So, extended wet winter,
yeah, it was like, yeah.
I mean, it was obviously a perfect storm.
So you can imagine when I went out there to see this, and it was just like heartbreaking. All right, so if you decide to go with what I did, and think really seriously, I say think before you decide to build one of these, because try to put it where it gets the most sun and exposure and drainage, and site the bed in non-traffic areas. And I say that very seriously because if you got pets, grandchildren, grandmother, something like that, yourself, yes. You walk past those things, seriously, they can jump about 3 feet at you, and believe me. And build at least 6 inches above the ground, and facilitate drainage. Huh?
Because of my curious dog that you live in bamboo and Cactus, I think that attracted our first cat.
Okay, yeah.
We love that dog.
Well, my one cat came in. I had an outdoor cat for a while, and indoor, outdoor, and the cat one day came in just covered in, I forget what it was, but choya type I had to basically take a knife and cut her fur. So anyway, just be careful where you put this. Everybody wants to put it alongside their house, but if you got a sidewalk running there, don't do that. Believe me. So I decided I'd start over again. I don't know why, but I decided so. In the spring, last spring, a whole bunch of the people, and I thank you again for coming over, and we just basically tore up those beds and mixed in bags of topsoil and conditioner, and we covered the things with we left some of these. I've got some big yucca filamentosa, which, by the way, are just about indestructible here in Columbus. You probably see them all over the place. You see them with the white flower stalks. Mine just flowered, and so, okay. Some recommendations if you're going to do this. Okay? You think these guys are harmless. They are not. Get a very good quality, very sharp knife. These things are hard to cut, especially the choya types. Get a pair of tongs, a long handle weeder. You've seen the ones with the little triangle at the end, because you're not going to be able to get into these things, all right? And the mature choya types are almost knife resistant. And think, yeah, right. And think before you plant. You saw what happened. I planted those little things with, staked up. They grow real big, okay? And don't be afraid to lose a plant. Take cuttings of your favorite plant. I cannot stress this enough. You will lose plants. I'm sorry, that's just the nature of the beast. Some of you can say, well, Joe had a plant and it lasted forever and mine died yesterday. You don't know what the conditions are. They could have more sun, they could have less wind. You don't know. What I'm saying is, if you got a plant you really love, take a pad or take a cutting, root it, take it in the house, and hang on to it. I did not do that. I lost a whole bunch of things, and if I'd had pads, I could have done this. So, propagation. These things are really easy. You just plant you can cut off a pad if you want to plant it from a already existing plant, or the ones you get in mail order are usually not rooted. They're just cut pads. It's not a very problem. Just place the pad in a shady area for about 7 or 8 days, and allow the cut to heal over. And some people say, you use rototone or that kind of stuff. No, you don't need it. These things will root like crazy. All you have to do with Humifosa is just throw it on the ground and it will root, believe me. The choyas are a little tougher to root, but they will root. They just take longer. Okay. There are a few enemies that in an outdoor garden. Probably the worst one is rot, or you call it Black Death or whatever. Okay. This is when a plant simply cannot get rid of the moisture from overwatering, not enough drainage, or it's impeded right around the base of the plant, okay? So, sometimes you can salvage the upper part of the plant, but the rot usually starts at the very bottom. Okay, weeds, this is the biggest pest you will have. The weeds cut off sunlight, circulation, even running water. And this is what leads to basically the fungus or the rot at the base of the plant. Because if the wind can get to it and the rain, as long as it can drain out, it's fine. But if you get a big old dandelion right next to the plant, or some grasses or other things, and it would just cause it. I've had more problems with that. The plant looks great. You go out there one day and you touch it and half the plant falls over because it's right down in the very roots. And do not use Roundup or other herbicides. I tried this once. If you try using a herbicide, cover the plant with a box or a thing, so I spray all around it. But the nice thing about being outdoors is you can blast the living daylights out of them with malathion or something else without having to worry about poisoning yourself or cats in the house. I mean, because you don't really want to use any herbicide or anything in the house. So that's the nice thing about outdoor. You can just spray it wherever you want. But this is going to be your biggest problem, is trying to stay on, because you will not be able to get access to the middle of, you saw those beds. You're going to try and step over a bunch of cacti, and all you're going to do is just stick your legs in something, or God forbid you fall backwards or you trip or something. So, yeah, just trying to put and you can even step on a pad that's fallen off. I always wear shoes, by the way. Yeah, the outdoor environment, you have very few pests attack the outdoor. A healthy grown plant is probably your best defense against all kinds of bugs. If you've had indoor plants, you notice that the mealybugs go over the weak and the straggling. But outdoors, if they're growing healthy, heat, rain, imagine your mealybugs are getting rained on. Like a couple of days ago, we had that like 1 inch in an hour or whatever it was. So imagine what the mealybugs are trying to, then it gets warm. So you get very few parasites. Plus, there's probably stuff in the soil. There's probably little critters running around that like to eat mealybugs, I'm sure. Because every little insect out there has its enemy. So bottom line is, you still may get some pests, but you will just really, I've never really had any problem with pests. It seems like the rain raining on these guys, the wind blowing on them, and just mealybugs, you can still try to get them off. I just never had any problem with outdoor plants. Indoor, yes. Every year, the mealybugs take their share of my plants indoors. So, okay. As I say, it says, I have grandkids now and I can longer grow cacti. Okay, you have to move. A plant has outgrown its original location. Become a danger to kids or pets. And remember, you can rip these plants out very easily. I've got to do is dig them up with a shovel. Believe me, I've rescued a whole bunch of plants, including huge pads, groups of pads. Just take a shovel, cut it up, and you relocate it to another place in the garden. And I got a thing down here about restuccoing my house. Many years ago, I had that big imbricata up against my house there. I was having my house restuccoed. Guy was going to come out in about 2 weeks. I said, okay, can you work around this? He said, yeah, probably. So I made arrangements. I got this big tarp I put over it and tried to pull it back so he could get behind it. Well, that didn't work out. He said he could be out in about 2 days. What happened to the 2 weeks? The only thing I could do was just dig it up. I dug it up, put it on a big piece of plywood, and I moved it into my garage, and I spent the whole winter in my garage. It was okay. So, but anyway, you can transplant these guys relatively easy. I mean, this is a plant in the winter. This is when we had a nice storm. You can see where the ice is. I just happened to be out there and took a photograph of this. This plant survived, by the way. So, okay.
What's another line? I think that's when I lost my.
Did you? Okay.
The same computer that we lost all the other.
Okay.
Other than that,
So it's important to keep track of the plants. I know, because if you want to share a plant, it's almost nice if you give it to somebody here in the club and say, this is a Opuntia egomanii, needs lots of sun, it'll grow real big. People really appreciate that. Whereas if you just give them an unknown plant, not that I will accept that, but it's so much easier. Plus, if you want to look up cultural information, if you know what the plant is, you can look it up. So you want to keep track of the plant. Now, I know we've probably all been to a sale where we've all taken home a bunch of plants in a tray. What are the chances of you getting that tray home without some of the labels falling out? About zilch, right? And then you have to figure out, well, I can eliminate this label because I know what this one is. So the bottom line is, the labels, to me, they're so, especially if you have a collection of like 200 plants, smaller ones. Usually sometimes you can tell, oh, I know what that plant is. But then a couple of years later, you kind of forget what it is. So,
I just gave up.
yeah, well, that's one option, yeah.
Yeah, I just gave up. If it's labeled, I'll label it.
Yeah.
I do have metal ones now. I do have
So-
metal ones. I'm trying now.
Okay.
I used to use the glass that
Right.
the ones that actually brush the letters in, so that would raise the letter on it.
Yep.
Put the label on a piece of plywood, drove that into the ground. That's it. The schools put up with it.
Yeah, there's some,
I've got a little engraver now, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna try engraving metal copper labels and see how much that works. With my personal collection, my neighbor's stuff.
Yeah.
Label on any of them.
anyway, basically, those little 6-inch labels you have, outdoors they're basically worthless. Because the sun, the rain, even if the labels manage to stay in the pots, and they don't because they grow legs and jump out, they break off when they get cold. You just go to move it and it breaks off. The sun, the rain, everything else fades the writing. I don't care what you use. Use a number 2 pencil. The only thing you can do is like use metal and engrave it, like Mouse was just probably saying. And you can get those labels with the stems, so they will stick down in the ground, and you can get them like 6 inches. I think you can get real high ones depending on what garden store you go to. And you can get those, and those will probably stay. But my God, the squirrels, and I have feral cats in my yard. They just kick us. Yeah, I know. And I have feral cats in my yard, and they think that my outdoor beds are the greatest litter box in the world. So they run around and they just will scratch, and there goes the label. Plus, as the plant grows, if you got the label right at the base of the plant, the plant's one pad, 5 years later, it's this big. Where's your label go? Your label now has disappeared into the somewhere in the center. So what I'm saying is, there's, okay, I guess, I'm trying not to propagate in the late fall. This is pretty much common sense. They just don't have a chance to really both develop roots and grow and get. Now, a lot of them will, but you need to give them a chance. And even if you get plants from mail order, think about where they come from. They come from the same thing. So you need to wait for a plant like someplace in Utah to plump up, get readily growing before they make a pad. Because if you get a pad taken in February, that pad is not going to probably make it. I'm sorry. They face the same things where the plants a lot of times will desiccate. So if you want, you can find seeds for about all these things. I don't know why. To me, why go through all the seed growing when you can buy a pad and have 2 years growth already in your, okay? I know a lot of people have grown from seed, and they're commercially available. And usually, they have a real high rate of germination. They're not little tiny guys like you. They're usually pretty good sized seeds.
What's a concern with that?
Yeah. So you don't have to plant all cacti in your garden. You can plant agaves. There are about 300 species of agaves. Most of them are not winter hardy. Several, like agave utahensis and harvardiana, are winter hardy. You can tell utahensis, where does it grow? Utah. Well, is it cold in Utah? Yes, it is. By the way, if you try to find utahensis now, there's one Ebor spino, which has got real long spines on it. Those are getting hard to find, and they're getting real expensive. I saw one the other day for $100 on that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they're very slow growers. Yeah, so. Also, you can.
Utahensis to grow without being underneath some kind of cover.
I'm sorry, get to grow.
The agave utahensis, have you gotten them to grow without any kind of cover? I mean,
I had a huge collection of them. Just about all of them were in the house. But believe me, Harvardiana and utahensis, I think Perrii, you can look it up. I'm not saying they're going to survive. Don't get me wrong. But they grow in an utahensis. Look where it comes from. Okay, if it's going to grow in Utah, it's probably going to grow here.
See, I don't know, zone 5 in Utah is totally different.
Well, that's true. They're different zones, and you know, you go to you go to Arizona, and if you take the train to the Grand Canyon, as you slowly go up in elevation, you'll see the occasional agave, and then as you go up more and more, there are more and more agaves. They're between like 2,000 and 3,000 feet. You get to 3,000 feet, and they start, disappearing off. I'm not saying. All I'm saying is try them, which is probably if there was a message in this presentation, it's like try something. I mean, if it dies, okay, you've lost an agave. I mean, oh yeah, there's a bunch more. I just put a couple of them out there. Yeah. Well, yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, and yuccas, you can plant yuccas in there. Of course, yuccas are just about indestructible here in Columbus. They're all over the place, yucca filament. They also spread like crazy through rhizomes. And you can plant some others. I mean, you don't have to limit if you're going to plant an outdoor garden, spurges, which are euphorbias, I guess, alpine. I'm not familiar with the alpine plants, but hens and chicks and those things look real nice. Hesperaloe is winter hardy here. Most of they make great plants. They flower with this pink coral flower. It's absolutely gorgeous flower. Oh, The option 2 labels, and I got these slides out of rack, I guess, is you use photography. Now, I'm not going to go into all the advantages of photography. You know, provides a permanent record, and you can go back in 5 years and see how much the plant's grown. But I just put one. What you do is you can take a plant here, you identify it, you put a thing in there, and you save that slide or photograph, whatever you want to call it. And hopefully you back them all up sometime or another. And that provides you a way of now, this is not foolproof and it's going to take a lot of time, but I think everybody has a decent camera, at least everybody has a phone that you can take photographs of them. But this, of course, 5 years from now, I can probably go out there. You see one of the labels buried in. Oh, by the way, this guy here is buried. That's an ant mound. And the ants don't seem to bother it. I've never had ants bother them. They probably help by, you know, breaking up the soil underneath. So, but I've had a label there, and so it's just a viable option to your 6-inch or other labels that will eventually. These things will not, they will not fade or anything. So, and you can build up a collection, and I have more slides at home now what to do with. I took them in my garden when it was flowering and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, tried going through about 3,000 slides. So I did a search on my backup job for JPEG. It took an hour for the search to find all the JPEGs. So here's just some final thoughts. You know, always wear gloves. I can't stress that enough. I think we've all learned the hard way here.
Hey, I can add something about gloves. So there's a lot of gloves that will not prevent somebody from coming to that, especially in the past times.
I know, but it's a first line. You won't get those shark things. I guess because it can't hurt.
I mean, it helps. But
Yeah, it helps.
It's not guaranteed.
No, it's not a guarantee, but you know, same thing with pants. Yeah. All I'm saying is, you know, it can't hurt. Let me put. Same way with your pants. If you go out walking through one of those things, chances are you're gonna. If you've ever walked out in the desert in Arizona, your chances of getting something stuck in your pants are about 100%. Usually that bougainvillea, which just waits for you to come walking by, and once you get there, the spines have little hooks, and they just do not come out of you very easily. Anyway, you know, don't agonize over lost plants. Believe me. You will lose some plants. I don't care where you grow them, you will lose some plants. Some of them are just not winter hardy. I may grow a plant, it may grow great. Mouse might try to grow it outside and it will just die. Okay?
Some of them just hate.
Yeah, some of them, yeah. So I'm saying, like say, take a cutting if you really want to, but you know, you're going to lose indoor plants too. God only knows how many of us have lost indoor plants, and overwatering or what have you. I know. I just let you know that big agave I had.
Yeah.
I lost that guy. I'm still crying over that, but that's another whole story.
I like how your number one thing is up there is where it belongs.
Yeah. So anyway,
I don't. She's an anomaly. I don't.
Oh, you don't agree with that, or?
I don't wear gloves because every time I wear gloves, the gloves get full of the rocket.
Yeah.
And then I have to throw the gloves away.
Well.
And I'm too cheap.
Okay.
So I just leave.
All right. So you're a Okay. So you want to be a masochist? Go ahead. Be my guest. The bottom line is research on the web. If you've got a plant you really like, Go out to the web. There are so many things out there anymore. And they will tell you what the growing conditions are. They will tell you what zone it grows in. I would tentatively avoid zone 7, though you can try it. Zone 8 is just out of the picture. Zone 8 and above. But you might, zone 6 and 5 and 6 are probably your best bets. Most of these websites now will tell you what zones they will grow. And they're usually pretty good about it because, this is another thing. Be generous with your plants. I think everybody in here has been real generous with bringing stuff in, as we can see back here and over on the other table. And share your knowledge and your experiences. You know, if you find out something doesn't work, tell other people or say, yeah, that grew real well for me, or I had no success with that, but what's your success may be somebody else's failure and vice versa. And I just want to thank you for sharing this with me. Again, there's our friend, the Puncher divicii. Okay. And here's the answer cat will now answer your questions.
Very wise cat.
Pardon?
Looks very wise.
Yeah. Yeah. That's when I had him inside the house. You can see the books back there. And God, I think it's snow outside through the window. It's hard to say. But anyway, that's Ivy, the answer cat. So, yes.
If you were going to plant those outside today, would you put in a raised rock bed that's kind of higher than in the ground?
Which ones?
Well,
Any of them?
any of them, what you had by your house?
No, they're all going into, the exception is, I have, you guys, I think, maybe it was Monica brought me over a tray of, was it hen chicks or semperviridiums? Yeah, and I will probably plant them in some stone. Build up the stone and stick them in but no, I will plant them just in the flat bed. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
No, I'm not gonna, you've seen, I don't know, was it Sean or Andy? Someone showed us this winter hardy garden where it was built up high. There were plants, and was it Andy? I'm not gonna do that, I'm sorry. First of all, I don't have enough stone. Second of all, I probably don't have the patience to do that, so.
Mr. Harlem,
Pardon?
if you chose to do that, is that going to be better or worse? Or
I think it would depend on what kind of wind you have coming through there as well, because, anything that's above ground, your roots are potentially exposed to wind, depending on how big your bed will be and how hard it is. But more stone means more drainage, so there's a balance.
Yeah.
I think it depends on what plant. Some are more accepting of other things versus not. If you're on a hill or not, like Andy's, or not Andy's, but Sean's is on the slope that's coming down from the house to the city. So he's got a lot of drainage, so a flat ground there is very different than a flat ground like this, and just put that in.
That's kind of like similar to that sloping ground, the houses that more or less are higher. It's a different slope, but I found that if I don't plant the soften, the roads is a little better really fast. And to the extent that I have found a third place other than nothing in the soil, because I did that thing, I did that, and it's kind of various indicators and the trails. And no, of course, I'm choosing plants that are like diffusive. They're getting to a higher number of other useful cities. It's like, okay, they're useful cities. And they're going to see our tourism, the tourism. Yeah, all about friendly life.
Humidity, moisture, water control, and trying to maintain temperature so that the water is cold and warm. My most successful winter garden bed was the very first one I built.
Okay, no problem.
And, yeah, it was, everything we heard, and no lock